All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the GTMAI podcast, live from GoNimbly's RevFest here at the House of Yes in Brooklyn, New York. This is our first live podcast, which is awesome. Ross's first live podcast too, so we're doing this together. So I always want to start by thanking our listeners. Thanks for making us one of the top business podcasts on Spotify, where you can hear from founders, CEOs, and go-to-market executives about how they're leveraging AI in business and go-to-market. And I'm excited to welcome Ross Rich, our CEO and co-founder of Accord. He's developed a B2B customer collaboration platform. He launched it in 2020. That's revolutionizing how teams drive execution excellence, which we're going to talk a lot about today. He's got a unique background spanning music management, marketing, and a pivotal role at Stripe. He brings a distinctive perspective to the sales technology space. Welcome to the show, Ross. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Yeah, good to do this in person. This will be fun.
I know, it's amazing. All right, we're going to jump right into it. So the first topic that we're going to talk about today is really around the execution excellence across the customer journey. So execution excellence isn't just about doing more. It's about clarity, consistency, and reinforcing winning behavior. So we're going to break down exactly what that means from Ross's perspective. So you champion a few things here: operational rigor, clear playbooks, accountability, and continuous improvement. Having scaled Stripe sales team from 3 to 300, that had to be an amazing feat. You leverage that experience now at Accord. So let's dive in a little bit. So first I want to talk about the data. So from your perspective, because that's the foundation for everything. So what are some of the clear measurable indicators that you look at on an ongoing basis that the go-to-market strategy is delivering execution excellence? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think definitely everything comes down to the customer. So one of the biggest things that we look at when it comes to driving execution excellence and operational rigor is, are we talking to the right people? That's, I think, often both pre and post sales. We're not continuously engaging with the right senior stakeholders. Maybe you can get a lot of time with some associates and what we call below the line people, not decision makers. And I think having that confidence, conviction to have that senior level conversation from a data perspective, looking at the number of stakeholders and the frequency, that's where a lot of things start. And so that's one of the biggest data points that we look at and try to help our customers engage higher and wider on deals to drive that execution excellence.
I love that. And that's so important because so many companies, they don't have a lock on their ICP. They don't even know how many stakeholders are engaged.
Yeah, or who the right people are.
Or the right people. One of the things that your platform does is it really helps understand what's going on. So how does someone know that they have the right, and not only the right stakeholders from your perspective, but also that they're having the right relevant conversations with those stakeholders?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think a lot of this comes to, and this is a common phrase, like having a point of view on deals. And we talked a bit about this even before starting the podcast. It comes to the bar being raised for sellers, especially in this world of AI. They can handle a lot of these transactional SMB deals. What happens with mid-market and enterprise, I think the bar is going to be raised in terms of having that unique point of view, what to say to customers when you get that time. It's harder than ever to break into conversations. When you have that opportunity, what value are you bringing? Are you going to be someone that's just answering questions and giving them information that they could Google search or ChatGPT? Or are you giving them a perspective on the industry, right? Teaching them something. So they're going to book time with you, not just to look at that demo of the product, but actually to spend time with an industry expert. And that's when we talk about execution excellence. It's not just the people we're talking to, but like you said, that value you're bringing to the conversation.
Yeah, and super critical today, especially with all the noise of AI and everything out there, is there's so much happening. And so having those relevant conversations that are personalized and really driving impact to the right stakeholders are super critical. Now, one thing, at Stripe, you had a team of 3 at the beginning, I believe, and then you went all the way to 300. So this seems to be a lot easier when you have a team of 3, 4, or 5 that you can manage this. But as you start rapidly scaling, how the heck do you even keep up with ensuring that the team is having those relevant conversations with the right people, et cetera, at scale?
Yeah, it's really about building a culture around this, right? It's not just, hey, we bought some tools that we can measure who we're talking to and the conversations we're having, right? It's how do we build this consistent culture of, again, having that conviction in the conversation, having that strong point of view, engaging with the right people. And that comes from first starting with hiring the right people that actually want to be great. We talked about the craft of sales, like people that are passionate about that as a profession. This isn't just getting on the phone and smiling and dialing. This is, I want to be great at this role. I want to help people make an impact at their companies. I know that people are putting their necks out buying technology, especially in this market when, the dollar's worth a lot more than it was the last 10 years. How do you make sure that you have that confidence and conviction to make your customers successful and care? And I think it's how do you scale that? Yeah, you can hire 3 people that give a shit. Right? How do you hire 300 people that give a shit? You need to make it into your culture. You need to celebrate that stuff when it happens. And I think you need to have the feedback loop when it doesn't happen. I think that's the biggest challenge that I see. I don't think there's enough leaders out there, both at that executive level, but even on the front line, to have the right way of having a conversation with a rep and saying, hey, you know how we say we care about this stuff? Here's how you've done it, and here's how you haven't. And being able to hold the team accountable to that. That's typically where I see those things drop off from, like you said, the scaling from a few folks to a whole team. Having those tough conversations, I think a lot of people shy away from, and that's the only way to be excellent, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned something, and we did talk about this on, right prior to us coming on, just the craft of sales and how when I was selling, and probably you as well, we went through these robust training programs for months, did ride-alongs, did all these things, got coaching all the time, and had these accountability and rigor, and that just doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. And what are some of the ways that you have a company, you have sales teams, et cetera? So tell us a little bit some of the ways that you're driving execution excellence with that sales team. How are you training them? How are you leveraging AI to ensure that they can be a top seller and raising what we call the middle up? If you can raise the middle up to your top performers, how are you doing that today? What are some of the things that you do?
Yeah, I think, and kind of why I built the company in the first place, is a lot of this stuff, I think, in the past has been around inspection versus execution. By that, I mean, we're asking people to spend time outside of their day job, outside of 50% of their paycheck, if you're in sales, is most likely tied to customer outcomes. We're asking them to take time away from that to write down these crazy acronyms and do stuff in Salesforce and in separate documents to inspect internally, instead of asking them just to do that on the field and inspecting the documents that they're actually building with their customers and champions. So how I look at it for my team, and where we're helping try to up-level this for other organizations, is how do you build that stuff into your customer interactions and look at the things you're actually doing with your clients, instead of taking them off the field and doing this more internally, which is not why people signed up to be in sales, right? No. They signed up to be in sales to have fun conversations like this, get better, learn, drive impact with clients, not take time writing up these internal deal review documents and QBRs. So how can you just focus more on the outcomes with customers and what you're building for them to empower them to get decisions made, again, instead of the inspection-based work? And that's what I found really motivates a team, helps them get better, and really ground them in what we actually need to do to drive outcomes with clients and get them to say yes and make them successful, instead of a lot of theory stuff, right? We talk a lot about the competencies and go offsite and do these mock negotiations, instead of, hey, what's the proposal you'd put in front of a customer? How do they react? Let's talk about real deals here instead of all this theory.
Yeah, no, super cool. And it's actually funny because in Jen's keynote, she talked about getting sellers back on the golf course. So I think it's very relevant that the reason that we have sellers is that really have these customer conversations. That's what they were hired for. They weren't hired for, like you said, QBRs or inputting things in CRMs and stuff like that. So let's talk about the evolution of that seller journey. We also discussed this as well, but the kind of seller is moving more kind of up market and enterprise because AI has taken a lot of that transactional. And actually buyers, even in B2B, are expecting more from their buying experience. There's more millennials, Gen Zs, et cetera, are becoming B2B buyers. And what's different about them? They're digital natives. They have things like Uber and Netflix and Amazon that they're used to. And so it's really changing how they expect a B2B buyer journey to happen.
Yep.
And their experience that they expect. Also with AI, it's just they're able to find so much more infinite knowledge on demand.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about this. So what are you seeing come from the shift of sellers having to pivot to more of these kind of strategic partnerships, these consulting type approach? What are you seeing right now with your team and others?
Yeah, I think we're really seeing this transition from helping people buy to selling. I think they're helping themselves buy even more these days. I think that transition's been happening the last 10 plus years. I think you're really seeing this turning point from the seller's job isn't to help people buy in terms of giving them information. It's actually translating that information to, again, that point of view, understanding the market. And I think that's where you're going to continue to see top sellers be more impactful. I think with some of the technology and AI today, maybe your top enterprise seller that can only do 1 or 2 deals a year can maybe do 3, 4, 5. And that's the people that are contributing. The top 10, 20% are doing 80% plus of your revenue. So maybe you can have that number go up. Maybe even have your top 10, 20% do 90 plus. But what does that do to everyone else? You can't just hope that you get a great buyer who's going to champion you internally. You really got to go out there and be more effective as a seller. I think those bottom folks, it's going to be more obvious that they're not being as effective, and that's going to be eaten up by technology. And I think the bar is just continuing to raise again to be a proactive seller versus, again, helping people purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are so in the world of AI, so there's definitely information edge on the buyer and education perspective. And so how are you leveraging AI, or your sellers leveraging AI to really stay ahead? So we've talked a lot about having relevant conversations, making sure that you're engaging with the right people. So give us some like tactical examples of how AI is being leveraged inside of a core for that.
Yeah, it's a great, there's kind of two things that come top of mind for both engaging the right people and saying the right things. One is, before, to be really informed on a key top account, you'd have to do a ridiculous amount of research, right? Reading and listening to their 10K and public statement reports, digging into the financials, going through news reports, looking up all the different stakeholders manually, trying to find them, their backgrounds to say relevant things. Now, using deep research from Gemini or ChatGPT or any of these other tools and integrating that to a Cord, in seconds, you can now get all of this info. So what that lets people that actually take a thoughtful approach to outreach and engagement with accounts, you can say things that are going to make you stand out much more than the average seller, right? So I think you can stand out and have a more informed perspective on an account and a stakeholder. So that's one, is how do you, again, elevate yourself from, hey, anyone can do this research. How do you turn that into a unique perspective based on your understanding of the industry and your company uniquely to solve some problems? So that's one. Two is engaging with more and more senior people. We went through this world of all these sales engagement tools, all this like 14-step cadences and bugging all these people. It's so easy to get lost in the inbox. How do you make sure that you're saying the right thing to like the high and wide enough group? I actually find that we get higher response rates, almost the more senior we get, because sometimes the more thoughtful approaches, it seems like a lot to these mid-level people. But when you say something informed and intelligent to a CEO, a board member, someone in the C-suite, I feel like it's actually easier to stand out in their inbox because they're scanning through, or their EA scanning through, and like, oh, this is interesting. This is a product we really care about. So I think it's both having that informed perspective across the account and making sure we're going high and wide enough to the right stakeholders and standing out there. So we're helping people identify the right people to go after and building those unique points of view instead of just pitching product and functionality.
It makes sense because no one really wants to read a 10K or do all this stuff. So ultimately,
or know what to do with it. I think that's going back to the craft of it, right? Is okay, you can have this information similar that your customer has all this information. What do you do with it now? Going back to execution excellence and building this culture is like, we care about informed points of view. We're going to understand our space. When we do this research, we're going to know what to say based on that. It's that last mile. We talk a lot about the difference between 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 is exponential in terms of the impact. And that's what I feel like there's a big resurgence of people really caring about, going that extra mile and being really thoughtful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually going to be the next point. So I'd love to double click on in just a minute is when folks are doing this research, right, there's just so much information on not only on the buyer side. Like imagine being a buyer trying to navigate AI and tools and everyone saying they have an agent, but not really, and all these things. But then on the seller side now, previously I could pick and choose what I was looking at, and then I had to spend all the time reading, so I didn't get enough information. Now it's almost
infinite.
Now it's almost did a complete pendulum to the other side where I have infinite information. So are there certain things or ways that you've found to be able to connect the right information to your right value proposition with some of these stakeholders, or something that you do at a Cord, your product, or just in general that your sellers are doing?
Yeah, and I think this gets talked a lot about in theory, but very few people do, is I think in this world, you actually need to get even more specific on your ICP and the personas and understand them. We're talking about how do you identify the right people and say the right things to stand out. I think getting deeper on, hey, these are the 3 people we talked to at this company. We know the ins and out at every level, exactly what they do it every day. We know what tools they use. We know what challenges they have. So you should be able to talk to someone, hey, it's a VP RevOps. I know what they eat, sleep, live, think about, read about, go into the conferences and events. Like, you know that space. I think that's what I think about when I think about this information overload, is how do you translate that into the reality of these people, the personas and the companies that they're at, right? So it's not just, oh, we sell to SMBs, mid-market, enterprise, this, that, and the other thing. It's we talk to these 3 people at this type of company. I think you need to be much more specific and try to solve big problems. Because again, if it's everyone's sending out these mass email notes, it's so hard to stand out. How do you say the right thing to the right person at the right type of company becomes more important. And I think you can win. You can win larger deals. It's easier to stand out when you get more specific. And I think that's this counterintuitive thing that we're seeing the companies that are winning do really well. And I think people struggle to narrow in because you're saying no to so much opportunity in theory. But in practice, we know that doesn't work from a marketing, sales, and success perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this has always been a challenge previously, which is like something you said I want to emphasize, is understanding who your customer is, what they do, what they eat, sleep, breathe, their priorities.
Intricacies,
And AI can help you do a lot of that now, where used to you'd have to go on site or you'd have to really get in depth, and AI can support you there. So transition a little bit. There's a lot of fear around AI, like taking roles of sellers and things of that nature. And you've really argued around that it's really about empowering humans and not replacing.
For certain jobs, yeah.
For
I think,
certain jobs.
again, where the craft comes in, I think when people really are dedicated to something and doing something great, it gives them more, it saves them time and allows them to do more. But yeah, I think the people that go through the motions,
Yes.
good luck. Yeah.
I agree completely. And I think this is critical. So there's a difference in augmentation and especially on the enterprise space. You've talked a lot about enterprises. I've never seen AI that can close an enterprise deal from end to end. And maybe it can one day, but I'm not sure. So I think it's really about, and this is how we preach, is how do we augment, how do we assist, how do we really scale and get people back to the human interactions that they're used to. So before we transition out of here, just real quick, is there any sort of AI driven workflow that you've implemented or things like that you look at today and be like, I don't know how I ever did this manually previously? Is there anything like that you do in your day job?
A lot of stuff, but maybe to hit on the meta point there and then get down to the details. We struggle you'll talk to any RevOps leader, struggle with getting reps to manually input stuff into Salesforce. Good luck making them prompt engineers, right? They want to spend time with humans. They want to solve problems. That's what they're excellent at, and that's the craft that they developed over decades. I think it's a problem when you try to make them super technical about certain things. Percentage of your team are going to be technologists and early adopters and dig into that stuff. The average person just isn't. So having that your solution to use these new tools and talking about workflows, I think is not the winning path. Yeah. I think if you're trying to use AI at a company and saying, hey, everyone just get a premium business account and start using it, that's going to take maybe decades, the next generation, to kind of have default 50% of the team doing. The way that we think about that is, how do you integrate it into what they're already doing today? Hey, this is how I research account. This is how I engage with stakeholders. This is how I build business cases. You should meet them where they are. That's how we think about building AI into our tools is, hey, don't have to search this manually. Just build it into, hey, this is why I do stakeholder mapping. Okay, cool. We're going to ingest AI into their intelligence to make those recommendations. Hey, I'm building business cases. Okay, in a click of a button, can you test that with Gemini or ChatGPT or other LLMs to pressure test that and maybe build in some more information that's available on the internet? Same thing with all those key motions of an enterprise or mid-market sale. I think trying to retrain everyone around, again, that's like saying, oh, when the internet came out, everyone needs to know how to code. Something like that. No, give them the tools that meets them where they are to do their job. That's our approach and kind of how we're thinking about both internally as well as in our product.
Love that. We got a bunch of vibe coders now, including myself these days. But no, something that you said I think is very important, and we talk about it a lot too, is meet people where they are today, embed it in their workflow. The tech stack for go-to-market is already bloated enough, and the last thing you need is to be able to have another tab open or another swivel chair to another solution. So how can we start embedding these things into people's flow?
Exactly. I see really cool things with the call intelligence, adding notes to the CRM. How do you do more of that, right? Yes. Hey, I'm building a business case. I'm doing an account plan. I'm doing stakeholder mapping. How does that sync back to the contacts in Salesforce instead of let's ask them to do more with more technology and then manually update this stuff?
100%. And so call that eliminating drag. So what are those kind of manual work tasks that's happening that we can eliminate just like this here? Because who wakes up every day and can't wait to get my coffee and I can't wait to open that CRM and go to work.
You want to get on calls. You want to be having great conversations, intelligent conversations. You want to be doing that fun stuff. Yeah.
That's right. Awesome. Ross, before we jump off, tell us a little bit about Accord. Where can people find you? Tell us a little bit about what Accord does.
Yeah, check us out. You can just Google Accord Sales, whatever it is. Check me out on LinkedIn, Ross Rich. Feel free to shoot me a note. And if you're focused on helping up-level your team, adopting AI, driving execution excellence across sales, and have a mid-market or enterprise motion, would love to chat.
Awesome. Thanks again for the time.
Super fun. Yeah.
Thanks again for the time. It was super fun. First live podcast. Been great. So thanks everyone for tuning in to the GTM AI podcast. We'll see you next time.